All right, everybody. Welcome. Happy Friday afternoon to my European friends, Ukrainian friends. Good Friday morning to you in the Americas. Good evening to you all in the Far East. Hope everybody is doing very well. We'll do the old power curve percentiles in a second, but I just want to show you this. This is, we'll get more into the actual volatility, but this is the price moving into the power curve, right? So just obviously we don't time travel right into the power curve. We have to find it. And we're quite a bit below it today. Okay. But still, much better than a couple weeks ago when we were getting close to 80 intraday, 95, 96. Much better intraday. But anyway, if we got back to trend, that's trend. At 96% R squared. Now, we take a look at volatility. Okay, so volatility being price at any given time when you see this on a 30-day basis. 2/3 of the time goes up or down 6.3% here. Okay, and obviously when we have a lot of vol, this window rises. When we get out of that window, it falls. We can look at average vol. Helpful. Although probably skewed because average holds these really, really early days, thinly traded, with an average that's probably, it keeps this number perhaps artificially higher than it should be. And it seems higher, right? I mean, you see where the green is, and we're barely, 4.3% seems like not a good way to do all-time average. So you can do a trend, a little bit better. Although still pretty elevated, but better. So starting 2026, relatively muted vol. Couple percent a day, and on a trend that's 3.83%. And you get this nice inverse relationship, which I wholly expect to continue. Where the rate of growth of the power curve does decline, but also the volatility declines. And likely, as I think a couple people were asking me about before, the delta around the power curve is going to get smaller as we move out. It's a tremendous asset, just a tremendous asset. And to think that, 5 years ago, we had, relatively speaking, 2 to 3 times the vol on a trend. And more than that, if you caught a really volatile period, right? 14% in the 30-day window here. If you back up beyond the YouTube thumbnails, it's a pretty comforting thing to look at, even if it takes us a while to get back to this trend, which at the moment is 126K and change. Back to the rainbow. Nothing new. This thing's not. That's pretty close. Trading just below that at the moment. But we're still around the medium. So 50th percentile, the median of all of this activity. If you look at, say, the 40th, 50th, 60th, and you see the OLS is slightly above that even. All right. We get a nice range. If you're like me, you would like just a nice, boring trend around the power curve, but something tells me that's not going to happen, right? It's a bit too easy. Life's never that easy, right? Could be thrown for a loop. But I want to direct your attention to, this post by David _ENG_MBA. Great little primer on options and, as he calls it, the gamma cage, or this sort of what TradFi is a range that they pin at with shorts and longs, and it's not something that they can hold forever, but it is, for the time being, has the effect of being a volatility suppressor. All right, it uses the example of Robert selling covered calls as 100K at 100K because he wants the yield. And of course, there are plenty of people in the market that like this, like having the yield, like ironing out their vol from a lot of the assets which could be considered risky in this market. I'm not going to go all through it, but basically, the deal is, as more option expiries hit, typically, to keep this moving, you roll over, and you roll over at a higher strike. All right, so 110, 120. And so what happens is the floor keeps moving up and the cage gets reformed higher, the gamma cage. I think it's interesting. Following open interest basically is a good way to do this. And I'd like to try to, for my own app, get this stuff mapped out more. Basically, this resistance, as you're showing here, big resistance at 100K. And this net gamma, which has to be rolled over once these options expire. And a lot of them expire today. So we'll see how this plays out. Wall Street is more immersed in Bitcoin than ever. If you're a plebe like me, of course, you can just keep buying. but it's a good read. Also want to show you this again. I haven't showed this in a while. Evolution of the power trend. Okay. So this is on a monthly, sort of smoothed out a little bit. Just the month end. Look at the price. There's the trend, which is the current trend. So back here, it didn't really look like this. And rather than draw you 5,000 different lines, I can show you this, which is where the power trend would be at that point. All right, so as you can you sort of have to use your imagination, but it's steeper here, almost flattens here, and gets steeper again. And then as you can see, it evolves very close from 2016 to today, like almost fantastically aligned. The last two booms, if we can call them that, 2017, 2021, pulled it up a little bit higher than it is today. But, you know, for 3 years, 2 to 3 years, we've been literally on almost the same prediction. So I'll try to show you that now as far as the prediction goes. Okay, so let's look at the evolution of today's price. Okay, so here we are, January 16th. The price itself, actually, I need to show December, but it doesn't matter. The price itself of the trend, 126,694. Right, so they all align there. Let's even take out well, let's just leave it. That's fine. So take a look at the blue, number 2 in the tooltip as I move back. And you can see at the date that I moved back to, that was the prediction for today, January 16th. So back in August 2024, we thought it would be 128K. Obviously, we were a bit high. Okay. 135, September 2023, bit high. 170, May 2022, which was a year after those big booms, bit high. Notice now before the 2021 boom, we come down again. So 140. That's 140 is the projection for today. All right. They all meet up at the level today. But as you go back in time, you'll be able to see the projection. So as you notice, as we go, before and after those peaks, those 90th percentile moves, we get a little bit distortion. But 140, 130 back in October 2020, predicting for today is not bad. It's not bad. All right. Again, we're distorted a little bit here from the 2017 boom, showing 170, 180K today. And notice the price at the time was $7,000. So it's still a pretty great model. It's okay. We're not as exciting. We're not at that number as people would like. But look back here now. Let's go back before the 2017 boom. This is aligning up pretty well, isn't it? When the Bitcoin price was only $2,400, the power curve back then projected today, January 16th, 2026, a price of $120,000. So I like this chart a lot because it can show you, how good the trend is. Because if I show you just this, you can say, oh, that looks pretty good, right? But that's not how it looked at the time. Right? It's more like this, actually, that I need to show you. Right? And then you can see in the past, because it was so sort of young with Bitcoin's pricing, it's way out of whack. We're off the chart, right? I'll take the tooltip off. Wasn't working well. That's a $177 billion prediction based on the price data we have up until July 2011. All right. And you can see how the evolution is way extended here, right? Evolution is extended. But what is interesting still, and another conclusion here is, right? So let's look here again, May 2018. This is a year after the 2017 boom. Prices were coming down from 20K in December 2017, which is actually already by the end of December was 13K, 14K, even though December 16th it was 20K. So very volatile and very wild. Notice how the number 2 is coming down, right? So we can say that the power curve has been flattening, right? We see as it projects out, we go down, down. You know, unfortunately, these are too bullish of figures, 160, 150K for today, and now we're here at 126. So 126 is an okay number compared to 96K price, but it's still a little bit, you know, a little bit high. So that brings me back to here, where we're always, every day that we're under the black line, very simply, we pull the black line down. That's it. Every day we're above it is a happy day because we pulled the black line up. But I want to go back to this, and let's see if there is a point. Good afternoon, Samavana. Hope you're good. Hope you're good, my friend. It is great accuracy regardless, but let's see if we can find a number in the blue line which is lower than today's level, which is 126K. Okay, so we didn't find it here. Let's just take everything off. We didn't find it here, right? So 126 is the trend. We've been higher, higher, higher. But then right here is an interesting little dip. And there it is. It's May. See? April 2017, we are at 119.6. May, 119.26. So this is the most, May 2017, before that 2017 boom, was the most pessimistic power curve projection we ever painted. Which I would say is that's a nice thing. We have a while to get to the lowest level. It means, I would say, this is how I would interpret this, is take comfort in this, that Bitcoin has plenty of room to moon again, because this number has gone, this number has been lower in the past. Right? If all we saw in the past were these high numbers, like 300,000, 184, whatever, it would still be a good curve, but it might not, you might be thinking, okay, this is going to always slightly dip a little bit lower. That's not true. The power curve here, and you have to look at the evolution there. So the evolution is coming down, 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 and it's because of this crypto winter is so deep here. We had like just insane projections in this time period, but once coming down, 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 we got to this period, we hit a true nadir in the power curve statistics. So that's, in my opinion, a bullish sign. I mean, it doesn't mean we can't this time bottom out again, all right? Because again, every day that we're below this curve, we pull it down. But we're pulling it down at a much more gradual level, I would say, being only, 10, 20K off, hopefully less, right? Then say here, which again, at the time it was here, there you go. There's the actual trend. We just went through a long period here where we just kept pulling it down. Right, somewhere here, you can see the inflection, right? The price actually goes above the curve right there in May 19th, 2017. So this was the longest pain. If you look at it from a anchoring yourself around the power curve perspective, this was the longest pain period. It doesn't mean we can't go through that again. I'm not saying that we will. But what I am saying is there's hope that we can go much higher. We can get back to periods where, like, instead of being 119K, right, as a projection for today, we could start having 124, 127, 149. So it's we're not at like all-time bearish moments as far as the power curve is concerned. You can also show the evolution of 2030's price. This is kind of fun, right? So again, I'll just take it off. Let's just look. Okay, so as of today, January 2026, the power curve, projects 553K price. And then we can just see what that projected in the past, all the way out to 2030, but looking further in the past with the data that was available. So we got to like 600,000. This is a number where I think it's a nice round number. I think it's possible. I think this is in play still, in my opinion, 600,000. But of course, we were even higher. Got to 700. Did we get to 800? Not there. Let's see about the 2017 boom. We did. So in the 2018 boom, June, September, August, July, we projected 865,000. And what I'm saying is, don't think that's not in play. It's in play. Might be less likely based on what, the more data that we have now, and now it's only painting 550,000. But look back here to the lowest point. It's going to be the same math. It's going to be lower than today, right? It's the same math. So 556 is what we're painting for 2030 today. But back in the worst sort of bear of Bitcoin, even though we're coming out of it, but it's just how the stats work. 520K is our worst case on a trend. So hopefully that shows you, looking at both evolution of today's projection, evolution of 2030's projection, that we can still get back to great numbers in 2030. We got to have bigger booms to make that happen. So far, we're not showing that, all right, in this last cycle, but I would say up to, say here, 600,000 seems reasonable. It's not as crazy as 7 or 8, but pulling ourselves up from 550 back to, a 600,000 projection for 2030 is totally in play, in my opinion. This is more data that supports this. Well, I shouldn't speak too soon. Let's just look at it. Daily revenue, right? Daily revenue. It's how much miners make each day mining Bitcoin, if they sold all their Bitcoin that they mined that day. Okay. 60 million. Now it's coming down. It's been 38, 41. It's lower. Can smooth it out. All right, we get this number. Sorry. Easily nice. So there's a nice peak here. It's like if you get to, say, here and you see this rolling over, bad sign. Not saying that I called this at the time at all with this metric, because I didn't. But looking back, you can see that it's something that smooths out that volatility. Same thing happened in 2013. Once you were tumbling, you were tumbling. So as the price was down from 1,300, 1,200, it was not looking good. A little dead cat bounce, but this was a hard one to read. Double top, 2021. And then I'd say it's been even harder from here. ton of fee revenue happened in this last halving with inscriptions and stuff. Not even looking at the price, just looking at the numbers, though. I mean, we're at lower levels on 30-day revenue than we were at the halving. So miners were making $2 billion a month. $2 billion a month to peak, went down. Even though ETFs were booming, this was ETF season. Been rising, but still low. I mean, yeah, you could say maybe higher highs, but we're going to a low again from here. So is it a lower low? It's like almost on par from this level. This is certainly higher than this. This is not higher than this. So hard to read, hard to read. And we can zoom out one more level to trailing 12. This is very smooth, very delayed. Let's put the price back on. To me, this is bullish. Like bullish in the fact that maybe the cycles are longer. Maybe, you know, the business cycle theory now is correct. It's not 4-year cycle, but business cycle. But it seems wild to me, even with all the ETFs and L2 stuff, that on-chain revenue for miners would be topping at the same level. To me, that seems improbable. You guys tell me what you think. Right? Back in 2022, we topped it. $17 billion a year, trailing 12 month. Here, same level. Seems improbable. Maybe it's good morning. Dog said B. Let me pull it up for you. So measuring the slope, annual return of the power law, we can get annual return and then also like a CAGR. Let me pull it up. Taking forever. Because I have it go out so far. All right. Actual returns below zero or negatives, right? You can see it in the tooltip. Negative returns can be huge negative returns, right? Negative 60, 70%. Even though here I don't think we hit 80. Yeah, just 74. November 2022, it sounds about right. Actual, much lower returns. On a curve. All right, that's the price on a curve. Here's the trailing 12 month on a curve. So it's not exactly CAGR, but I have a CAGR one too if you want to see. We've rolled into the end of last year at 42%. And now we're at 41.8 on a curve, but you know, it's even less than that if you went right into the current price because we're below the curve. In fact, as what we did close negative, right? Last year. There you go. There's your negative close, which itself one could say is a cycle buster. I admit. Because never on this odd year after the halving have we closed negative for the year. But we did. TTM is here, which is like you can barely see it on the actual price, the line. We can go all the way out to 21 million coins here, if you want to see that for fun. This is where I do think you're going to get interesting theories about finance, about loans. I mean, if Bitcoin becomes the risk-free asset, right, and by 2070 only, in this sort of international dollar terms, it's returning 10%, which is still enormous, right, by 2070. We'll be on a Bitcoin standard long before then, in my opinion, but assuming somehow you can model a yield in Bitcoin terms, which I still think is a big if. Regardless of the yield, holding on to the asset is probably still one of the best generational opportunities you could do to give to your children, or if you're 10 years old and watching this, you'll be in the prime of your life right here when Bitcoin is $150 million equivalent, even though we're not probably going to think of it that way, but this is just the way the curve looks. It's a great chart, isn't it? Remember, we get to million, start of the 2030s. All right, I got May 2033, which is only 23 years exactly after first pricing data started. I got pricing data starting May 22nd, 2010. So anyway, that's the answer to the question. It's fun to look at. My opinion, as always, I do think you'll start, presuming the world settles down from all the global conflicts that are happening right now, but people start to finally get on a Bitcoin standard. The value of Bitcoin about this time will reach, at 4 million, 5 million bucks, that's going to reach the level of all the world's base money. And probably sometime around here is when major revaluations will occur. Governments having to admit that they just can't print Bitcoin. They can print their currencies all they want, but they can't print Bitcoin. And again, a lot of people thought with Trump that sort of the state level threat of Bitcoin was over. I do not think that at all. I think you got to see all through this period. As Peter Todd said when I was in Finland over the summer, I think there will be a political element to this. Satoshi said it even in one of his first response chains to his first email chains, to his releasing of the white paper, is you can't expect the tech to do everything. If the regime turns into this, they totally lock you down, shut down the internet. You're going to have to politically overcome that. It's the Estonian Foreign Policy Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Estonian Parliament. Great follow. I guess everybody's seen what is going to happen with Trump, or waiting to see if he's going to follow up with his "help is on the way" comments. Judging by the former actions, it seems like, boots on the ground for sure will be out. He's going to have to intervene in other ways. It's a wild time. A couple other things I watched about this situation, which I think is, super interesting. Again, Times Radio, Times News, Times of London. It's all part of the same gig. Satoshi, by the way, where he pinned the Genesis block to that front page. Little metadata in the Genesis block. This gentleman, Iranian-British citizen, Iranian-British citizen, talking about the possibilities of having the revolution be successful. He was pretty bullish, but I've been following this, tracking this a little bit. I've seen a lot of people have been bearish. This Revolutionary Guard has a few 100,000. Then there's these other groups, right, which are entrenched, which have hundreds of thousands more. I think you're at least looking at 1 million people that are part of protecting the regime in Iran. They have all the guns. It's very difficult. Again, she's a great follow, Masi, here, talking at the UN. Total Russian style, by the way. There's no dissident who is safe overseas in Russia, because that's a traitor policy, and you're basically marked to be killed. Look up Alexander Litvinenko, way back in 2006. We're going to see over the weekend. Russia's war against Ukraine has been genocidal from the start. Europe must help. A lot of my friends have been talking about how tough it is at the moment, right? Negative, below -10 Celsius. The authorities have had to drain like 5,000 buildings so the pipes don't burst. On regular blackouts, half the day. Very, very tough for them right now. Probably the toughest, and with the bombings that are occurring every night, it's probably the toughest that it's been since the start of the invasion. Heroes, regardless. Here's Tomas Ilves from Estonia, one of my favorites. It's an American Estonian, by the way. So the rhetoric continues from Uncle Sam, 52nd state for Greenland. If you want to look at that a little bit more, I have a couple other recommendations for you. Here's DW News. This is German English news channel. Ben Hodges. He's a 3-star general. Talking about how it's just strategic impropriety to threaten Greenland. I want to go on this a little bit because obviously this is a huge own goal for NATO. This is pretty funny. It's a great premise for a sitcom. In the icy wasteland of Greenland, a ragtag NATO detachment of 13 Germans, 2 Norwegians, 3 Swedes, 15 French, and 1 lone Brit must defend the Arctic from, well, mostly boredom, polar bears, and each other's national stereotypes. She goes on. As many have said, it's a complete waste of time compared to the actual war from a genocidal dictatorship that wants to exterminate Ukraine. But this is what we are dealing with. Let's come back to that one. Just a reminder, to the extent that there is international law and any treaty that's on, let's say, for example, the United States books is U.S. law. It is domestic law, ratified by the Congress. And so Article 1 of the North Atlantic Treaty, parties agree to settle international disputes peacefully and refrain from using force in any way that is inconsistent with United Nations purposes. So this actually isn't a good summary. You can even see that it says in the Article 1, it says refrain from using the threat of force as well. So we're in violation of that, at least from the American side. A lot of people talk about Article 5, but Article 1 is also an important one, just talking about NATO sovereignty in itself. And remember that the Warsaw Pact, which was the goofy NATO-like treaty for Eastern Europe during the hellscape communist times, it was Russia invading itself multiple times, were the only invasions that the Warsaw Pact countries had to deal with. Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia all invaded by Moscow. This also is an interesting thing. I've talked about this before, but Rubio and Senator Tim Kaine back in 2024 did get it into law that congressional approval is required for the U.S. to leave NATO. But again, depending on how this goes this year with Trump, I could see Trump just making Rubio read like a unilateral withdrawal from NATO, regardless of what the law says. So we're going to have to see there. Here is Kasparov. So again, they were talking about not having elections. Trump's lackey had to sort of walk it back that it was a joke. But again, Garry Kasparov, who is a fantastic speaker for liberty and freedom, I would absolutely take it serious what he is talking about, because he's always saying that it starts with something that doesn't seem unreasonable. But if you just keep saying it again and again and again, well, this is what you have to worry about. I've said for a couple years now that I think if he, well, there's basically it's absolutely a risk that the elections could be canceled in the U.S. in November. We'll have to see. It's the states, the nice decentralized nature of the U.S. government is that the states have power on elections, but with Trump threatening the Insurrection Act against Minnesota, it's looking rough there. little bit about Greenland again. So Malcolm Nance, he was on the International Legion, leading the International Legion for Ukraine back in 2022. Ryan Macbeth, who's a very good military analyst, talked about this as well. Some consequences that I think, regardless, aren't being talked about. And again, U.S. has had 15,000 troops in Greenland before. Now it only has 200. It's had 30 bases before. Now it only has one. So it's not like, Denmark told them to leave. And so far, it's arguable if it's just talk. Perhaps you guys saw that Denmark met with Rubio and Vance. But here's a little bit about some of the risks. All right. Our global reach across the Atlantic will end with our closest refueling base in Israel or Egypt. 100,000 American soldiers will be forced to board civilian airliners and sent home, or be taken as POWs, detainees without weapons or equipment. Canada will close its airspace and sea space. U.S. ballistic missile defense at Petufik, which is the indigenous name of the old base, which was called Thule in Greenland. And Fylingdalis, I think that's in Norway, ends, which means we see nothing except what space sensors can see. U.S. intelligence has reduced Fort Meade, Fort Gordon, and Colorado Springs in Hawaii. CIA spies will be rolled up by their former friends and ours. No one will share anything with us. All global shipping will be closed. Denmark operates the largest shipping company in the world. 6 out of 10 global shipping companies are in Europe, world's biggest container ships, Denmark. Australia, New Zealand, Canada are Commonwealth, so they will cut ties with us or be neutral too. P.S. Denmark and locals turn all life support and generators at Petufik, and Canada resupplies it. All 150 U.S. Space Force personnel would become POWs. The guys on sleds, FYI, they have troops there now, and 35,000 caribou hunting rifles. FYI, France and UK have nukes, hundreds of them, so you cannot intimidate them with that. Again, I think this is a little bit bombastic there because the UK actually does have some reliance on the US for the nukes, as I understand. And then just talking a little about economic stuff, Ozempic being in Denmark. So, it's all talk right now, but as I said, this is there's many generals that speak about this. Hodges is very good, a 3-star general. Doesn't seem in the economic interest of the U.S. to do this, but we'll have to see if they're going to do it. And then talking about international law and what could happen. Obviously, if Greenland is taken over, it becomes very difficult for us in the Baltics, because if the U.S. just rolls into Greenland, then Putin, of course, is going to use that to justify taking Ukrainian lands, which he's already done multiple times. But then they'll just even try it more to other territories that the hellscape Soviet Union occupied. But then this is interesting, of course, as well. Russian Z bloggers claiming that China has now effectively taken over a large part of Russia's Far East. China is now allegedly earning taxes from areas from Chita all the way to Vladivostok, with a large Chinese population now residing there. The big prize, if you talk to people, is Lake Baikal. So this is larger than the U.S. Great Lakes. It's 20% plus of the world's fresh water. It's right here. This is China. This is Mongolia. So it's closer to Mongolia, but you have to see. Still a while from the border. From Beijing, 2,000 kilometers, to the border, 1,300 kilometers, which is quite far still. But yeah, really wild times. What do you mean, Coop? meaning that something they want to do anyway. Hello, John. Thank you. Hope you have a good weekend. Have a angry troll in here. As I like to talk about how 2 in 5 Russians don't have a toilet all the time because it's a former communist hellscape. That's no problem, of course. Let me find that chart. All right, let me see if that works. One second. I have to pull it up here. Okay. I think you guys can see this. This is very simple. If this is some troll that's been asking about septic tanks as well, this is a septic tank would mean you would have a toilet. All right, so you can just go ahead and read it. This is from the WHO. I'm going to have to take the comment off so you can read it. All right, it's from WHO. Population using an improved sanitation facility that is not shared with other households and where excreta and safely disposed of in situ are treated off-site. Improved sanitation facilities include flush/pour flush to piped water systems, septic tanks, or pit latrines with slabs, including ventilated pit latrines and composting toilets. So if you have a composting toilet, a septic tank, you're included in the population using safely managed sanitation services. It's very easy to understand. Obviously, a lot of these Arab countries, I mean, they're like all septic tanks. There's no plumbing there through the desert. It's a septic, essentially. So all the Arab countries, have 100%. The rich countries have 100%. This is a change since 2000. And if we scroll down all the way to number 64, we can see the hellscape that is Russia. Only 6% better from the year 2000. They were at 55%. In the year 2000, they got to 61%. So 61%, that is 3 in 5 or 6 in 10 have a toilet in the hellscape that is Russia. Ukraine, of course, is even better. And let's see if we can find Ukraine. Here's Ukraine. They were worse than Russia in the year 2000. Only 42% had access to a toilet in situ, and now they're at 72%. Baltics, of course, former Soviet countries, were low in 2000. All right, here's it's Malaysia, sorry, 67% in 2000, now adding 18%, roughly, 85%. Let's see if there's any former Soviet. Estonia, 92%. They've been pretty much like that since 2000. Lithuania, up to 95%. So all you have to do is take care of your citizenry, and you will improve their lives. So this guy's a total troll, so just gonna have to go read the WHO and enjoy the facts. So that's what I mean when I talk about it's amazing the Russian bots that come on. Talked about the Paige Schill, Benny Johnson, like one of these guys. It's amazing that these people are surprisingly, you know, praising the Kremlin for their great work while being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars an episode. So yeah, this is an interesting chart, by the way. I mean, the way to end these wars is to get rich, to have capitalism, to be free. And if you're not free, and if you're based on communism, you know, you get down in this area. Okay, so that's that. Let me get back to the. Sorry. Back here. Someone's got. Yeah. No, I think this is totally possible, by the way, Coop. This is totally. I heard John Bolton say this. I mean, if you violate your own treaty and you want to violate it, then you can get a twofer, basically. So you grab Greenland, take it, and you're no longer in NATO, and that's your glorious exit. So I would not put it through any of, I wouldn't put it past any of these guys that that's their choice. Although I did see, some European diplomats were surveyed by some European diplomats were surveyed by, I can't remember what paper it was, and basically they were all skeptical of Vance, not of Rubio, which makes sense. Rubio's always been a strong on foreign policy for the U.S. And of course, he wants Cuba to be free, his native Cuba to be free. But yeah, it's a wild time. I mean, I don't really know. I think everybody's sort of, at least how I feel in Eastern Europe, everybody's kind of bobbing up and down for water without maybe a direction. Because if the United States is going to cause this havoc with Denmark, while we have literally, I mean, it's some of the hardest nights in Ukraine, as far as my friends tell me. It's as General Hodges says, it's an own goal. It's just the biggest own goal we could possibly do. So I don't know if there are any American friends listening that think there will be elections in November, or I think they're at risk they can't be. I think the good thing is that the states run them, but it's just going to be a wild year. And for that reason, by the way, that's probably something in the plus column for Bitcoin. Sad to say that, but if Bitcoin's going to be an international hedge, as it is, possible it stays closer to the power curve while all this stuff goes down. I'll show you the central bank versus U.S. debt again. And I do want to get some more GDP charts. And GDP, of course, is not like some gospel great way to show countries' economic growth, but it's a general, I think, sign of power for different blocks. And I think people, if they were worried about the United States debt position, at least in the short term, again, Powell, ironically, who he's got under lawsuit, threat of lawsuit right now, right? Did a great job in getting him a relatively unlevered Federal Reserve balance sheet, compared to the United States debt. Doesn't mean that that isn't a problem. Doesn't mean it's not a huge problem. But Trump wants lower interest rates, easier credit. He's got room to do it. He really does. Yeah, I agree. And the sad thing, is that U.S. of course has made major mistakes, right? Like the Iraq, Afghanistan war, major mistakes. At least as far as trying to, spread the democracy thing. Like if it was about adding security to the global order or defending, certain borders, like Bush's father did in Kuwait, that'd be one thing. But the, trying to impose democracy, obviously, no success in Afghanistan, and Iraq is tenuous at best. But that's what I've shown as well. I like to try to show you guys at least the perspective of small countries. Estonia would stand with a free Iran. I mean, I assume everybody stands with a free Iran. I think people don't want to take the risk with their own people fighting to do anything, which is understandable. But as that happens, these kleptocratic evil regimes get more dangerous. More bloody every day. And it's going to be up to the people then at that point to take it out. But, I showed that tweet yesterday about how Estonia had revoked the student visas, just student visas of people that were promoting Hamas and Hezbollah. Like, you can totally be for liberal democracy, anti-terrorism, anti-Islamic terrorism, and still try to be to some sort of a international order. But I think the Americans have something different in mind, at least a certain faction of them. So we're going to have to see. I do like, sorry, where is it? I do like Ilves a lot. He doesn't really hold it back. I mean, he's a retired Estonian president. Speaks American English perfectly. So you're going to see a lot of, in his view, and I think is probably true, correctly proven opinions where we've been warning about this stuff from the dangerous economies to the east that don't have democracy. And now it's here. It is remarkable to me that, this is happening in Iran. This is happening in Ukraine. And like NATO's got to be thinking about a Greenland grab. Where's my? I thought I had a Greenland map. Yeah, well, there's this funny one. It's like a sitcom. I do wonder as well if amidst all this geopolitical uncertainty, Bitcoin will stay volatile or just stays along the curve, right? As David pointed out in this very interesting post, right, you have this ironing out of volatility, of course, with financial instruments, and Bitcoin is more financialized than it's ever been. So that's one factor. But you have geopolitical uncertainty on the other side. At least, I could be, of course, being in Eastern Europe, very much at risk. I could be overstating that risk. I'm not sure that I am. It's certainly an easier choice to me to hold Bitcoin. Always never financial advice, but it's an easier choice than gold. Although I guess we got to check in on the gold chart, don't we? Yeah. This would be good to get some good exhibits on as well, right? They used to have, for a long time, like ancient world, pre-biblical times, they had these debt jubilees. Because exponential growth is unsustainable at its core, not unlike power growth. Um, the debt jubilees, though, were always for the farmers. They were never for the merchants. But mapping all that out, I don't know. It does seem like, for sure, like the fourth turning are like every 3 generations. There's like 3 overlapping generations, 80 to 100 years. We have a new world order. Let me show the gold. Strongest period for gold in the entire life of Bitcoin. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that, right? This 2013 into the crypto winter was super difficult. We bumped below this 10% level a lot, which is 0.3x, right? 70% discount of the gold trend at the time. So it's not unprecedented, but it is, matching historical lows. I just wonder how much longer gold bugs are going to get such a good deal on Bitcoin. 21 ounces of gold per Bitcoin. Still double 2022 levels, but not as good as 37 ounces, 40 ounces, which it was a year ago. Let me know if any other charts, guys, you want to see for today. Continuing to work in the back end to give you all some access to these charts. Going to do a subscription-based thing, but I think you'll really like it. It should be very helpful. Just very intuitive. Something I wanted to do for a long time, frankly, but have been unable to without some of the right tools. And there's a lot of good AI tools these days. But yeah, I would say this is slightly bullish. I mean, of course, if it goes down, like we get, I don't know, 10, 20% off the high, then it'd be bearish. But it's just a blip, right? The halving really cut off the minor revenue, right? You're looking at minor revenues just cut, completely sliced off here after the halving. Even goes down, but then went up and then down on an annual basis. But I really have a hard time believing that we top at the same level of the last cycle. To me, that one is the hardest, right? Because here in 2022, we topped at, almost three times the prior cycle top. And here, it was even more, right? It was closer to 10, 8, 10 times. Yeah, that there is. And it just gets easier and easier to diversify the holdings of your coins, right? Use multi-sig. Don't keep the keys at your mother's house. And it's like magic. Magic internet money, as they say. So I'm certainly not worried about where we are or anything. And for those that joined didn't catch the top of the show, right? We are not at a projection level. At a power curve level, we're actually not at an all-time low. All-time low would be what we painted here in May 2017. Which our price is lower than this. Okay, so in May 2017, when the price of Bitcoin was only $2,300, it predicted today, January 16th, 2026, that the price of Bitcoin would be 119,000. So of course the price is lower, right? Under 100, but the curve is higher, 126. So it's not that the curve always gets a little bit lower, it goes up, it goes down. And the lowest it has been is here. So I would say that again is bullish. Doesn't mean we can't go lower from where we are today. But, if it went up from here, right? If we got more bull runs and more, every time we're above this black line, it's a good day. And we haven't had that much this last cycle, right? We've been on a monthly frequency, we've been under it quite a bit. And it is step this out to December, but it doesn't matter. See it, same deal here. Just a few months we've been above the power curve this cycle. But it does not mean we couldn't shoot right back up, right? Because we've done it. We've done it before. This was the biggest bear amount of time under the curve. Yeah, I agree with you. Sminston had a chat yesterday. I don't know if he updated it. Yeah, I don't see it, but this is still, it's from Plan C. It's the same idea. All right, so this is actually a better way to see the oscillator. This is Bitcoin versus the PMI. This is Bitcoin versus the power curve. And then the PMI on its own oscillator, I presume. And this looks good. This does look good, I have to admit. Better than a 4-year cycle, better than the money print, as we talked about yesterday. The money supply can go down, Bitcoin can go up. The money supply can go up, and Bitcoin can go down. That was the lesson from yesterday. But this is pretty decent, I have to admit. So I got to get this as well, in the old app when I get it charted up. Anything else, guys? Any tweets? Any prayers? Any thoughts? Again, I'm not too much on the political, but it's just wild. Meaning I'm not like bringing political news all the time, but this, as far as the old world order stuff, it's just wild that you got Monty Python having to reaffirm to the world, quoting Mark Carney here, and Canada having to draw red lines to the Americans. He's got room. No matter what anybody says, Powell has actually given him room, in my opinion. You see how weak Venezuela is. You see how weak Russia is, even though they're dangerous and out for blood. China's still standing by, but you saw how weak Syria was, and Iran will crack down as well, out for blood, but they were weak against the U.S. and Israel over the summer. Regardless of all that stuff, of all the economic stuff, if the United States remains the best-looking horse in the glue factory, they can go further. Though it would be an interesting question for international markets if the U.S. went for it, if they went for Greenland, because besides all the alliance issues that I mentioned with, where's the tweet from Malcolm Nance? Besides the comedy here, this response Malcolm Nance gave, and other people have talked about this as well. God, too many tweets. What was I just showing here? Sorry. I'll find it eventually. If the international markets, like we saw with Trump's Liberation Day, that's still a very hurtful policy for Americans, as we know, the tariff policy. And as the 10-year was rising, all right, when the markets were falling, the opposite of what it should do or typically does. And it started to do that in April. And Besant apparently threatened resignation. There were all these rumors. No one knows for sure that everyone would keep buying bonds, but of course, you're always going to find a price somewhere. But Russia didn't exactly think through all these things before they invaded sovereign Ukraine. So it's a wild time, guys. Those are my thoughts. Not too fruity thoughts into the weekend, but this is how we're looking at things over in Eastern Europe. So I wish you guys well, friends of Bitcoin, friends of freedom all around the world. Hope you have a great weekend. Stay calm. 30% of tweets are trolling on the hot button issues. Keep that in mind. Had a couple come into the chat today, it looked like. So stay calm. Thank you, Coop. Appreciate it. Thank you all for watching. As always, like, follow, subscribe if you want. If not, that's fine too. Have a great weekend. Looking forward to showing you this app very soon. It's going to take a month or two still, but we're working hard on it, and it'll be interesting as the year goes on. So take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.